John Lynch is that model, and I'm proud to introduce him here to you today. Now, Governor, you're going to hear some screaming in a minute, and it's going to be screaming unlike anything you've heard since the Beatles went on Ed Sullivan. And most of that's going to come from Tula and George Pappas. But I think the rest of us are just as happy to see you here, and really pleased that you could join us here tonight. It's an important election. We've got 2 months. I'll encourage you to sign up at the table in the back for a shift on primary day and to help out throughout the rest of the campaign. But right now, please join me in welcoming someone who's a hero to, I think, many of us, and someone who did an incredible job at setting the ship of state on the right path for 8 years, our Governor, John Lynch.
But quite frankly, it's not the event I was expecting. Chris Pappas called me a while ago and he asked me if I'd like a job working at the Puritan back room. And he said, the interview process will be tonight at 6 o'clock and bring your resume. Well, as Chris knows, I would love to work at the Puritan back room. And I did bring my resume, and if this job doesn't materialize, if any of you have any openings, please let me know.
We'll fix them.
2 years ago, or my last campaign, I think it was MUR sent a questionnaire to all the incumbents and all the candidates. And one of the questions was, what is your favorite restaurant? Now, you can imagine the political discussions that go on, because you can only make one restaurant happy, and then everybody else will get mad at you. Well, I like lots of restaurants around New Hampshire, but my favorite has always been, and will continue to be, the Puritan back room. In fact, that's where I first met Chris. And I was amazed at his incredible customer service and how he treated each person as a member of his family. And that's what makes him, in part, such a great executive counselor. I think it was Kathy Sullivan who said, as she came in, it's like deja vu. Me being here at the Puritan back room, she walks in and she sees Rich Siegel, who was my campaign manager the first time around, chief of staff. And where's Rich? Where's Rich? Rich right over there. We should get Rich for that. And with me tonight, which is a real treat for me, is the longest serving executive security member in the history of the state of New Hampshire, Bruce Twine. So the Puritan, although he made me drive here. No, he didn't. The Puritan, as I mentioned, has always been very special to me. I was here for every one of my elections, both the primaries and the general election. The night before the elections, I would always come here with Bill Cashin, and we would go to every single table, shaking hands, saying hi to people, asking them for their support. The first time we did it, right before the first general election, we did it, the entire restaurant, and when we got back to the beginning, there had been 100% turnover in the booths and tables, so we did it again. And then we did it a third time. So I don't know where you're going to be, Chris, the night before the general, but that's a good place to be. So I really do enjoy the Puritan. In fact, I think it was just about 10 years ago next week when I was here for the primary. And then, obviously, November, I won the first time in 2004. And in fact, those of you who were here, remember I finally gave my victory speech at 2:30 in the morning. it was a very close election. My son Hayden, I forget how old he was at the time, but he had fallen asleep earlier. And we woke him up, dragged him here. Rich is saying, MUR's ready, you gotta go on now. And Hayden says, I gotta go to the bathroom. And I think, Rich, I forget the guy we ran against. But I think we're still waiting for his session. So that may come. You know, as I think of executive counselor, and I had the opportunity to serve with a number of executive counselors, including Ray Burton, I think there are qualities that are common among all of the really, really good executive counselors, of which Chris Pappas is one. And it's interesting, as Chris talked about it, I think it's also true. I think you have to approach the job in a non-ideological way. You have to be very pragmatic and very practical. And that certainly is the way Chris approaches that job. You have to do your homework. And as Chris knows, there's a lot of homework involved. You have to come to these meetings very, very well prepared and be ready to ask questions. And Chris certainly reflects that trait very well also. I think you have to come to these meetings, obviously with a point of view, but you have to be prepared to listen and engage in a give and take in terms of discussion, and even be willing to change your mind over a nominee or a contract that you may have formed an opinion prior to that. And again, that's Chris as well. As Chris mentioned, I think these executive counselor meetings should be nonpartisan. The focus should be on what's best for the people of New Hampshire. How can we make a difference in people's lives? And Chris already talked about infrastructure improvements, extending health care to tens of thousands of additional New Hampshire citizens. Again, that's Chris Pappas. And as Chris talked about, you really need to be outstanding at customer service. You need to represent the people of your district and the people of the state of New Hampshire. And I think Ray Burton is a model, but I think Chris Pappas really follows in the tradition of Ray Burton. And I don't know if there's a higher compliment that you can give anybody than to say, you know, that you remind me of Ray Burton in terms of the kind of customer service. So after the last election, after Maggie was elected, I intentionally made the decision to go off the political radar screen. But I decided to come back tonight to help support Chris Pappas and his re-election. And it does matter. Who is executive counselor does matter. It matters for the district, and it matters for the people of New Hampshire. And this is an important race. And as Chris mentioned, the district was redistricted by Bill O'Brien. It's a tough district. It goes all the way to Allenstown and to Bow, obviously Londonderry. Derry now includes Bedford. So it's a very difficult district. Chris is going to get reelected, but he's only going to get reelected if everybody works hard, contributes money, and helps out. And by your working hard for Chris Pappas, you're really working for the people of New Hampshire, because you're going to be making a difference in their lives and in the lives of the people of this district by re-electing Chris Pappas. So I'm delighted to be here. I'm delighted to see so many good friends. I'm always delighted to be back here at the Puritan, and I ask all of you to do everything that we can together to get Chris Pappas re-elected to the Executive Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you all so much. With that, we're going to close things here, but please stick around. The ice cream sundaes are coming out, and the mudslides are still going around. So please stand by. And Governor, you can grab a tray and start serving.